Breaking news now, a drug addiction counselor has just been sentenced to 2 years in federal prison in connection with Matthew Perry's death.
To this day, if anyone asks me, John Ritter, I get this chill because I love him so much.
They made us laugh, they made us cry, and then they were gone. But what Hollywood didn't tell us was the full truth about how they died. The real causes, the hidden conditions, the details that were buried until it was too late. Some deaths were misreported. Some were hidden entirely. Some involved medical emergencies that nobody talked about. These are 20 sitcom stars whose deaths were covered up, controlled. The truth about what really happened. 1. Matthew Perry. Matthew Perry was the sarcasm king, Chandler Bing on the massive hit, Friends. He made us laugh for 10 years with his quick wit and awkward charm. Perry was very open about his battles with substances and alcohol, writing a book detailing his journey to sobriety. He spent over $9 million trying to get clean. When news broke in late 2023 that he was found unresponsive in his hot tub at his Los Angeles home, the world believed his struggles were finally behind him. But what Hollywood kept quiet was the shocking truth revealed in the toxicology report. His system contained high levels of ketamine, a powerful medication used in medical therapy. He was undergoing treatment. The levels found were incredibly elevated. The real story of how those drugs got into his system was never fully disclosed to the public. What happened in his final moments was covered by a veiled privacy that Hollywood maintained. A tragic end for a man trying to help others while his own problems remained hidden from view. 2. John Ritter. John Ritter was the master of physical comedy on Three's Company and later became the beloved dad on 8 Simple Rules. On September 11, 2003, he was rehearsing scenes when he started sweating profusely and complaining of chest pains. Because he was known for his physical comedy and pratfalls, some people on set initially thought he was performing. By the time they realized it was serious, he was rushed to the hospital. What Hollywood covered up was the real cause. Doctors initially thought he was having a heart attack and treated him for that condition. But the actual problem was far more complex. He had an aortic dissection, a tear in the main artery carrying blood from the heart. This is a rare condition that doctors missed. As they treated him for the wrong thing, he passed away during surgery that evening. The medical error was glossed over. He was only 54 years old. The show continued without him, writing his death into the series. But the real story of how a medical mistake cost him his life was never fully exposed. 3. Phil Hartman. Phil Hartman was the voice of 1,000 characters on The Simpsons and the glue that held Saturday Night Live together. He was also the star of News Radio, playing the arrogant but hilarious Bill McNeil. Phil was known as one of the nicest guys in the business, but behind closed doors, details were kept hidden from the public. His wife Bryn had been struggling with substance issues and mental health battles. In the early hours of May 28, 1998, a tragedy unfolded. While Phil was sleeping, a fatal incident occurred that shocked Hollywood. The details of what happened that night were controlled and limited. The police arrived, but much of the narrative was handled carefully by the industry. What was covered up was the full extent of the domestic situation and the circumstances surrounding the tragedy. 2 young children lost their parents that night. The industry lost a genius. But the real story behind the closed doors of his home was never fully revealed to the public. 4. Michelle Thomas. Michelle Thomas played Myra Moenhouse on Family Matters, the girlfriend of Steve Urkel. She was high energy, beautiful, and incredibly funny. Before that, she played Theo Huxtable's girlfriend on The Cosby Show. She was a rising star with a bright future. She had just landed a new role on The Young and the Restless. Everything seemed perfect on the surface. But what Hollywood kept completely secret was her private battle. Michelle had been silently fighting a very rare and aggressive form of bone cancer called desmoplastic small round cell tumor. It is usually found in adolescent boys, making her case extremely rare. She underwent surgery to remove a tumor and thought she was in the clear. But the cancer returned with a vengeance. She passed away at the incredibly young age of 30. What was covered up was the severity of her condition. She had to keep her battle completely private so she could keep working. The public had no idea about the medical crisis happening behind the scenes until after she was gone. 5. Lamont Bentley. Lamont Bentley was a staple of 1990s sitcoms, best known as Hakeem Campbell on the hit show Moesha. He was the best friend and neighbor with the big appetite and bigger heart. He was a father of 2 young daughters with so much to live for. In January 2005, Lamont was driving alone in Los Angeles shortly after midnight, heading home from a movie screening. What the public wasn't told about his final moments was the full story. Witnesses said his car was traveling at high speed when it left the freeway ramp. The vehicle rolled down an embankment. He was thrown from the car. What was covered up were the exact circumstances and details of what happened that night. The incident was quickly reported and closed. He was only 31 years old with projects he had been planning to produce. The narrative was controlled and simplified, just a tragic accident. But the real details of his final drive and what led to the crash were never fully disclosed to the public. 6. David Strickland played the frantic, funny rock music reporter Todd Stites on Suddenly Susan. He had boyish charm and chaotic energy that fans loved. But deep down, he was fighting demons that nobody could fully see. He had struggled with bipolar disorder and substance issues for years. What Hollywood covered up was the severity of his mental health crisis. He had stopped taking his medication because he felt it dulled his comedic senses, a tragic choice many artists face. In March 1999, David went to Las Vegas. He checked into a motel in a gritty part of town, far from the flashy strip. What happened during those final days was kept private. The details of his last moments were not disclosed to the public. The production of Suddenly Susan was halted. The cast was devastated. They eventually dedicated an episode to him, but the real story of his private struggles and what led to his death was never fully exposed. It opened up a conversation about mental health. 7. Red Fox was a comedy legend who broke barriers with his stand-up. He became a household name as Fred Sanford on Sanford and Son. Everyone remembers his famous bit where he would grab his chest, fake a heart attack, and yell his catchphrase. It was one of the most famous running gags in television history. In 1991, he was starring in The Royal Family, trying to capture that magic again. What happened on October 11th was something Hollywood wanted to control the narrative around. He was on set rehearsing when he suddenly fell to the floor. Because he had done the fake heart attack bit hundreds of times, the cast and crew laughed, thinking he was doing his classic routine. What was covered up was the immediacy of the situation. By the time they realized this was not a performance, it was critical. He was having a massive heart attack. He passed away later that evening. The irony was poetic but tragic. The thing he joked about for years was the very thing that took him. But the real medical details of what happened and how long he lay there before being helped were never fully disclosed. 8. Adam Rich footage search, /www.youtube.com Vertuba search, Adam plus Rich, 8 plus enough is death, Antanol overdoses covered plus up, Adam Rich played Nicholas. The youngest child on 8 is enough. With his distinctive haircut and cute smile, he was everywhere on lunch boxes and magazine covers. But growing up in the spotlight was not easy. As he got older, Adam struggled to find his footing in Hollywood. He faced legal troubles and battled substance dependency for decades. What was covered up were the warning signs and the extent of his addiction. He was in and out of rehab, and the tabloids were often cruel. In his later years, he seemed to have found peace, posting about mental health on social media. That is why it was such a shock when he was found passed away in his Los Angeles home in early 2023. What the autopsy revealed was kept under tight wraps initially. The toxicology results showed an accidental overdose of fentanyl. He was not trying to end his life, but the circumstances around how he obtained the substance and what led to that night were never fully disclosed. 54 years footage search, https://www.youtube.com. Search Robin Williams Mork plus Louis body. Dementia plus covered up Robin Williams was an alien named Mork on the sitcom Mork and Mindy, a role that launched him into the stratosphere. For decades, he made the world laugh and then showed his range to make us cry in dramatic roles. He seemed invincible, like a force of nature that would be around forever. In August 2014, the news broke that Robin Williams had taken his own life at his home in California. The entire world went into mourning, but what Hollywood initially covered up was the real reason why. At first, people thought it was just depression. Months later, his widow revealed what had been kept secret. Robin had been suffering from Lewy body dementia, a degenerative brain disease causing hallucinations, paranoia, and anxiety. He was losing his mind and he knew it, but he did not know why. The full details of his medical condition and the extent of his cognitive decline were not disclosed until well after his death. He was fighting a silent battle against his own brain that nobody publicly knew about. The narrative was controlled carefully. Only later did the truth emerge. 10. Dustin Diamond footage. https://www.youtube.com. Druntfurts. Search Quan. Dustkants saved Belung. Slung cancer stage 4+. Deaths covered up. Dustin Diamond played Samuel Screech Powers on Saved by the Bell. He was the nerdy sidekick that everyone rooted for, playing that character for 13 years across different versions of the show. But after the show ended, Dustin had a really hard time separating himself from Screech. He became a controversial figure, releasing a tell-all book and getting into legal trouble. He was estranged from the cast for years. What was covered up about his final months was the severity of his condition. In early 2021, he was hospitalized in Florida, complaining of pain all over his body. The doctors ran tests. What they found was shocking and kept relatively quiet. He had stage 4 small cell carcinoma, a type of lung cancer. What made this even more shocking was that he was not a smoker. The cancer was incredibly aggressive. Just 3 weeks after his diagnosis, he passed away. He was only 44 years old. Because of the pandemic, he was largely alone in the hospital. His former castmates sent condolences, realizing life is too short for grudges. But the full details of his final hospitalization and the rapid progression of his illness were never fully disclosed to the public. If you're finding these stories about deaths covered up by the industry shocking, drop a 1 in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss more videos exposing what Hollywood tried to keep hidden. Your support helps us tell these stories. 11. Dana Plato footage search. https://youtube.com round search qui Candana plus Plato different strokes death overdose plus coverage details. Dana Plato played Kimberly Drummond on Different Strokes, the wholesome older sister, the picture of the girl next door. But once she left the show, her life spiraled out of control. She had trouble finding work. She lost her money. She struggled with severe substance issues. She ended up living in a trailer park in Oklahoma, far from Hollywood glamour. What was covered up were the details of her final days. In 1999, the day before Mother's Day, Dana passed away inside her trailer. She was visiting her fiancé's family. The medical examiner ruled it a passing due to a lethal amount of pain medication. What was not disclosed were the exact circumstances. The day before, she had appeared on the Howard Stern show, claiming she was clean and sober. Callers were cruel to her on air. What happened between that radio appearance and her death was kept private. She was only 34 years old. The real story of how she obtained the medication and the events leading to that final night were never fully revealed to the public. Her tragic descent from child star to tragedy was glossed over by the industry. 12. Gary Coleman footage //www.youtube.com Rudderits. Search qui Gary Coleman's different plus strokes, death plus fall plus brain, hemorrhage plus covered up. Gary Coleman was the face of Different Strokes. His catchphrase is legendary. He was a small man with a huge personality due to a congenital kidney condition that stunted his growth. Like Dana, he struggled attributed to the severity of the accident, were covered by privacy and industry. Nicholas Colasanto footage search, https://wyoutube.com varus. Search quai, Nicholas Colasanto plus Cheers coach, Heart plus Attack, Deaths covered plup. Nicholas Colasanto was the heart and soul of Cheers as coach, the dim-witted but lovable bartender who gave great advice. He was an older actor who had finally found the role of a lifetime. The audience adored him. But what was covered up was his declining health. Nicholas had severe heart disease that was worsened by years of alcohol use earlier in his life. During the third season of Cheers, his health began to decline rapidly. What was not disclosed to the public were the warning signs. He had trouble remembering his lines, so the writers put them on surfaces around the set. The extent of his physical and cognitive decline was minimized. He died of a heart attack in his home in 1985. What the producers did was significant. They did not just replace him. They kept his picture on the set for the rest of the series. But the real story of his deteriorating condition and how it affected his performance was never fully told. The public did not know the extent of his struggle while filming continued. 14. Merlin Santana footage search, https://www.youtube.com roots. Search Merlin Santana, Steve Harvey shows death shootings covered plus ups details. Merlin Santana was a rising star with charisma. He played Romeo on the Steve Harvey Show, a smooth-talking high school student. He also had roles on The Cosby Show and Getting By. He was handsome, talented, and only 26 years old with his whole career ahead. In November 2002, Merlin was sitting in a car in Los Angeles. What happened next was a violent act that shocked fans. Another person approached the vehicle and opened fire. What was covered up were the full details of the incident. Merlin was shot and passed away at the scene. It was a senseless act of violence stemming from a misunderstanding involving a woman. The person who took his life was later convicted. But that did not bring back the talented young actor. The circumstances leading up to that night and the specific details of what caused the confrontation were never fully disclosed to the public. It was reported as a random act, but the real story behind the violence was controlled and limited. 15. Bob Saget footage search, https://wyoutube.com rudes. Search Bob Saget full plus house plus death, head to trauma discovered, plus hotel mystery. Bob Saget was America's dad as Danny Tanner on Full House, the obsessively clean father figure who taught us right from wrong. But the real magic was the contrast. In real life, he was a delightfully filthy comedian. By 2022, Bob was in a massive career renaissance, touring and getting back to his stand-up roots. He posted a selfie after a set, beaming with joy, talking about feeling like he was in his 20s again. He drove back to the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando, filled with adrenaline and gratitude. The next afternoon, when he missed checkout, hotel security found him unresponsive in bed. What was covered up were the full details. The autopsy revealed he died from blunt head trauma. Authorities concluded he likely slipped in the bathroom or bedroom, hit the back of his head. What was not disclosed were specific details about the severity and the exact circumstances. The medical examiner noted that the fractures were so severe they were consistent with being hit with a baseball bat or falling from a two-story building. Yet there was no foul play and no drugs. What exactly happened in that hotel room in his final moments was never fully revealed. Conspiracy theories spawned because so many details were kept private. Alan Thicke footage search, https://www.com.truths. Search Alan Thicke growing pains, death at aortic plus ruptures, rinks, covers up. Alan Thicke was the cool dad Dr. Jason Seaver on Growing Pains, psychiatrist who stayed calm and collected while raising a chaotic family off screen. He was a Canadian icon. Hockey was in his blood. Even in his late 60s, he was out playing in celebrity leagues, seemingly in top physical shape. What was covered up was his hidden vulnerability. On December 13, 2016, he was at an ice rink in Burbank, playing with his youngest son. He was skating well, making plays, and having a great time. Suddenly, he collapsed onto the ice. At first, people thought he had just winded himself. When paramedics arrived, he was conscious and cracking jokes. Everyone thought he would be fine. What happened at the hospital revealed the true severity. It was not a traditional heart attack. It was a ruptured aorta, the exact same terrifying condition that eliminated John Ritter years earlier. Full medical details and the specific warning signs he may have missed were never fully disclosed. He passed away in the operating room. The real story of his final moments and the medical crisis happening inside his body were covered by privacy. 17. Franklin Seals footage search. /www.youtube.com. Search Franklin plus Seals, Silver plus Spoons, Cades, Death covered up plus Stigma. Played Dexter Stuffins on Silver Spoons, the fussy, uptight business manager who brought sophistication and sharp wit. He was classically trained and brilliant. He stole every scene with just a look or dry comment. But in the late 1980s, fans noticed Franklin was changing. He looked tired. He was losing weight. He seemed to be fading right in front of the cameras. What was completely covered up by Hollywood was his condition. Franklin was battling complications from AIDS at the height of the epidemic. In the late 80s, the stigma surrounding the virus was horrifying. People were losing jobs, homes, and families just for a diagnosis. Because of this, Franklin had to keep his condition a fiercely guarded secret. He could not tell the press and barely told colleagues. He continued to work delivering comedic lines while his body shut down. The public had no idea about the medical crisis happening. Franklin Seals passed away in May 1990 at age 37. His death was largely underreported due to the culture of silence around AIDS. He faded away quietly. The truth about his condition was covered up completely until years later. 18. Alice Pierce /www.youtube.com/use. Search Quilice Pierce, Bewitched, Gladys, Kravitz, Cancers, Death covered up secret. Alice Pierce played Gladys Kravitz on Bewitched, the quintessential nosy neighbor, peering through blinds and screaming about magic next door. She was a comedic genius with a unique face and voice that could cut glass. She was so good she won a Primetime Emmy Award. But what was covered up was her terminal condition. Alice Pierce had been diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer before Bewitched even started filming. She knew she was dying, but she wanted to work. What was kept secret from the cast and crew was the severity of her illness. She was terrified she would lose the part. She needed the work, so she filmed scenes while undergoing intense, draining treatments. There were days she was in agonizing pain, but the moment the director yelled action, she transformed into the energetic, frantic Gladys Kravitz. The public had no idea. Fans watching noticed she looked frail and thinner, but the real story was hidden. Alice passed away in 1966 at age 48. Her Emmy was awarded posthumously. The producers had to recast the role, but the truth about her hidden battle while filming was never fully disclosed to audiences. 19. Bernie Mac footage search https://www.tube. Search Mac, King's Mac, comedy, sarcoidosis, pneumonia, death covered. Bernie Mac was a force of nature and a presence unlike any other in comedy. He exploded onto the scene with the original Kings of Comedy tour, famously declaring his fearlessness to tough crowds. His sitcom, The Bernie Mac Show, was a massive hit because it flipped the script. He would break the fourth wall and talk directly to America. But underneath his strength, Bernie was fighting a battle inside his body. What was covered up was the severity of his condition. He suffered from sarcoidosis, a rare inflammatory disease affecting his lungs. It made breathing difficult and left his immune system constantly under attack. Bernie had managed it for years, claiming it was in remission. What was not disclosed was how much the disease had weakened him. In 2008, he was admitted to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The initial report was that he had pneumonia. Everyone thought he would bounce back. After all, he was Bernie Mac. He was strong. He was invincible. But his immune system, compromised by years of fighting sarcoidosis and strong medications, could not fight off the infection. The pneumonia escalated rapidly. He went into cardiac arrest. What was covered up was the real extent of his pre-existing condition and how it contributed to his death. He was 50 years 20. Sam Lloyd footage search. http://www.youtube.com. Search Sam Lloyd Scrubs, Ted, Ducklin's brain at tumor, death covered must up, cancer. Sam Lloyd played Ted Buckland on Scrubs, the hospital's sad sack lawyer, a sweating, nervous wreck constantly bullied. He was the ultimate loser character, but Sam played him with such sweetness that you rooted for him. Beyond comedy, Sam was an incredibly talented musician, leading the a cappella group The Blanks on the show. In real life, Sam was vibrant and happy. In 2019, he and his wife Vanessa had just welcomed their first baby, a son named Weston. Sam was overjoyed. It was the happiest moment of his life. What happened next was covered up from public view. In early 2019, just weeks after bringing his son home, Sam started getting terrible headaches. He initially brushed it off, thinking it was exhaustion. But the headaches got worse. He went to the doctor. What was revealed in the scans was devastating. They found a mass in his brain, a glioblastoma, the most aggressive and deadly form of brain tumor. What was not disclosed publicly were the full details of the metastasis. The scans revealed the cancer had already spread to his lungs, his spine, and his jaw. It was a death sentence delivered right as his new life was beginning. Sam fought bravely for a year, trying experimental treatments. But the full extent of his condition and the aggressive nature of the cancer were kept private. He passed away in 2020 at age 56. A cruel twist of fate. These 20 deaths share a common thread. They were all controlled by Hollywood. The real details were buried. The truth was hidden until after these stars were gone. Some had medical conditions that were kept secret. Some had deaths that were misreported. Some had circumstances that were never fully disclosed. Hollywood has always been in the business of managing narratives and controlling what the public knows. Death is no exception. The industry protects itself. It protects its interests. It protects its image. Sometimes the truth gets buried with the stars themselves. The deaths of these 20 sitcom stars remind us that what we see on screen and what we read in official reports are not always the complete truth. Hollywood has its secrets. It has always had them. It always will. If you want to know what really happened to your favorite stars, sometimes you have to dig deeper than the headlines. Sometimes you have to ask questions. Sometimes you have to demand answers. Because the people we love deserve to have their true stories told. If this video helped you understand what really happened, like and subscribe. See you in the next one.